Hello, everyone. This is Arthur Robinson Jr. I am the creator of PowerfulInterviews.com. In this exclusive powerful interview, you're going to hear from a great friend of mine. His name is Mark Leonard, and he specializes in purchasing franchises. And I highly recommend, if you want to listen to this life-changing, powerful information that you won't find anywhere else on the planet, go to www.powerfulinterviews.com. Mark Leonard, he talks about how to purchase a franchise. He talks about the benefits and the deficits of owning a franchise and much, much more. So right about now, go and get your pen and your pad and write down some notes. This information that I'm going to share with you in this powerful interview is going to change your life. So check it out.
Good evening, everyone. This is Arthur Robinson Jr., and tonight I have another special treat just for you. Tonight, I'm going to be interviewing a great friend of mine, and he is a franchise expert. His name is Mark Leonard, and without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mark Leonard to the call.
Thank you, Arthur. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'd like to thank you once again for taking time out your busy schedule to educate the listeners about franchises. I gladly appreciate it. Now, what I would like to know, and can you educate the listeners about who you are and what are you going to educate me and the listeners about regarding franchisees?
Arthur, what I'm going to do is talk about my experience in buying a franchise and buying a very popular, very extremely well-known franchise that you'll all recognize, and having learned rules about how that market operates, not only that particular franchisor, but later through a lot of other contacts that I made, a lot of work that I did, how I really came to understand how the structure of the franchise business is really organized, and it's substantially different than what you typically read about in the print publications and on the websites that are promoting franchises. So I am no longer a franchisee. I had my wife and I own 3 Subway franchises. That's the franchise organization that we bought into. We own 3 stores in the San Francisco area. We sold them all. They were all sold by the end of last year, and I'm no longer a franchisee. You'll learn why during the course of this time. But I learned a lot, and I'm here to help pass on some of the knowledge that I learned about how to get into the franchise system and how not to get into the franchise system.
Can you educate the listeners about what exactly is a franchise?
Sure. So a franchise is, and that's a really good question, because I think people think that they know what it is, but they don't really. So one of the things that it is not is owning your own business. And even though that's a lot of what the franchisors tell you that you're getting into, you're not. The franchisor, that's the owner, that's the parent company, if you will, gives you a license, an agreement that you can operate according to the rules that the franchisor establishes for a fixed, usually for a fixed and limited period of time in a particular location. You have to follow all the rules and policies that they have established, both by the franchise disclosure document, in the franchise agreement, and in policies and procedures that are enforced by the franchisor. So really, you are, as a franchisee, you are paying generally a fair amount of money in order to operate the system that is dictated by the franchisor.
Does it take a lot of capital to get started when you are investing in a franchise?
It depends on the franchise system that you're getting into. There are several that you can invest in that are under $50,000. It's not a big number, but there are a substantial number of franchises that you can acquire under $50,000. I would say that the quantitative majority of franchises is probably in the $100,000 to $400,000 kind of range for the franchises that you can currently get. And then Of course, there are some franchises that are significantly in excess of that. I mean, when you're talking things like car washes and franchise operations like a McDonald's or a Wendy's or some of the big burger franchises, then you're talking well in excess of $1 million, typically $1, $2, $3 million per location.
Can a man or a woman possibly get rich by purchasing a franchise?
I would say that it is possible, and certainly many have done that. But it's not an easy path, and it is a path that requires a lot of patience, and it requires a tremendous amount of hard work, and it requires doing some things probably differently than how the franchisors want you to do them, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But it is certainly not an easy path to getting wealthy, and it is by no means a certain path. It is not. Generally, investing in franchises is definitely not any safer, for instance, than buying an individual independent business, for example.
Are franchise fees refundable?
You know, that's a great question that I do get asked, and I usually get asked that question by people who are writing to me because they've already invested in a franchise and they've put money down, and they can't. The franchisor won't let them build where they want to. They can't find a suitable location, or their circumstances change, and they want their money back. As far as I know, as always know, it may be refunded in very select few cases that I don't know about, but generally it's non-refundable. When you plunk your franchise fee down, you are given the right to go establish a location for that franchise. But if you are not successful in that endeavor, if you can't find a location that the franchisor approves of, generally they will keep that franchise fee, saying that they've trained you, that they've given you all the tools that you need to establish a location, and that it's not their fault that you weren't able to find a location.
What would be the benefits and the deficits of becoming a franchise owner?
The benefit of becoming a franchisee is presumably you're buying into a system that is well established, a way of doing business that has a lot of rules. Supposedly, if you follow them, you'll achieve some measure of success. And so that might be appealing to someone, for instance, who hasn't been in business for themselves before and may not know how to establish all the rules and policies and all the myriad things that you have to do as a business owner. And I say that that's supposedly because my experience has been that there are precious few of the 3,500 or so franchisors that are out there right now that actually do a really good job of training their franchisees in establishing really what it is that will make their franchisees profitable and successful.
Is a franchise easy to sell?
No. And it's one of the reasons that I think anybody considering a franchise should consider buying an independent business instead. Let me give you an example. I had a downtown San Francisco location for my Subway sandwich store, and I got to the point where I wanted to sell that and a neighboring store that we also owned. I had a gentleman come to me. He owned 3 gas stations, each of which had convenience stores in them. He had $1 million in cash in his bank account, and he offered me the full price that I wanted for my 2 stores. He was quite a successful businessman. He went to take the standardized math and English test, and which were 20 minutes each. He failed the math test, and based on that, the franchisor refused to consider him as a buyer for my stores. So I lost out on about a $600,000 sale because this person, who is a very successful business person in a closely related business area and who had $1 million, who had accumulated $1 million in cash, was judged by the franchisor to not be qualified as a Subway franchisee. I subsequently sold the store some six to 9 months later for substantially less than that price.